Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Better Call Saul Season 6, Episode 4. It's called Hit and Run. So full spoilers for the episode, as always. And obviously there's a few answers this episode as to some things that have been ongoing, who is following Kim and Saul. That is definitively answered this episode. And I think what I liked about the reveal of that, other than the fact that the reveal of Mike sitting there was just exceptionally directed, and it was like, oh, it's Mike. Oh.
Where you hear his voice and you're like, oh, damn.
Yeah, the fact that he's coming to see Kim is just such a big deal, because and that's something she even questions, and we'll get to that when we talk about the scene. But I think what I liked is that obviously there were some theories about, okay, who's following Saul and Kim in episode 2, and this episode does the classic Saul thing where we get this opening scene where it's like, okay, this couple, they're in the suburban neighborhood, they're cycling around, they're kind of bizarrely in sync with each other, which, it makes sense to a point, but then there's a certain point like, this is like choreographed, but it works because it's kind of stylized and it's kind of, going with the music and all that. And it reveals them getting into their house, but then there's like, wait, there's like armed gunmen just, and they're not scared, they're not weirded out by this. They walk in and there's just armed gunmen like making a sandwich, and then there's another guy at the computer, they look at all the monitors, and she's offering them iced tea and stuff. And it's like, okay, who are they watching? And I think what I liked about the way this episode unfolded is I actually kind of I didn't recognize the house. Maybe it's the same house from Breaking Bad, and I could have recognized it was Gus's front door. That may be possible. I didn't recognize it either. Yeah, it's been so long that I didn't recognize the door, so I was like, wait, whose house? Am I meant to know this house? Whose house is this? But it was actually like a chunk of the episode where I was thinking about it, and I actually thought to myself, oh, what if this is actually just Gus protecting himself? Because we know Gus is suspected of Lalo, and then of course the episode played out from there. And not only did that become true, and we saw the result of that, but it also tied into why they're having Saul and Kim followed. The swerve here isn't so much that, some sinister person's watching them. The swerve is, oh no, Mike's having them watch just in case Lalo comes back to contact them or to attack them. He's having them followed.
Yeah, Mike obviously presents it as, oh, well, we need to just keep an eye in case if he shows up, at least we'll know where he is then. But you definitely feel there's an element, from Mike's perspective at least, he's chosen to, put a tail on them just to protect them a little bit as well.
Yeah, you'd like to think this is a bit of good guy Mike coming through. I also think he's pretty honest in the scene. I don't know if his 1 in 1,000 chance is completely honest. I think it's maybe a bit higher than that. I believe him when he says Lalo probably has bigger fish to fry, and I think that's true.
Yeah, but it's also pretty very useful for Lalo to have a lawyer.
It is, and we see how Saul's connection to Lalo spirals in this episode as well. But I really appreciate. Obviously, it plays into a few things. The idea that Kim's breaking bad a little bit more and more as they go through with this plan, and this idea that she thinks she's being followed, and it's like, wait, I could actually get into trouble for what I'm doing, because she's not really faced consequences personally, right? She's seen Saul have a lot of consequences for things he's done, but now she's actually starting to think, oh, this car might be following me. And she addresses it in a very head-on way, where she goes to confront them when she sees them the second time. But it's very notable that when she brings up the first time she saw them, when she was dropping the prostitute off at the motel, was Saul kind of like, hey, because you got away with it, trust me, it's fine. The only people who know what we're doing is us. And he's actually right about that. Mike even says, I suspect you've got stuff you don't want us to find out about. I don't care what you're doing. We don't care.
Not my concern.
Yeah. Yeah. Since we're basically talking about it anyway, this Mike and Kim scene, there's so much to like about it. The reveal of him sitting there, the idea that because she confronted them head on, he had to come and speak to her and sort of give her something to.
He's clearly a bit annoyed that his professionals got rumbled that easily.
Oh yeah, he even says, I'm hoping you won't see them again. They'll be there, but I'm hoping you won't notice them again.
Yeah. I think just the moment right at the start of this where one light is expertly directed, you hear his voice, oh shit, Mike's here. And then she's like, do I know you? And I kind of forgot that they hadn't really met obviously by the end she kind of remembers who he is vaguely.
So she has like a reason to recognize his face because he was there for a long time where she goes every day.
But not in the context of who he is now.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, yeah, this is quite a big moment for Kim.
I actually love that she got from the context of the conversation and what she's known about things recently. She actually figures out that this is the guy Saul was with in the desert before she remembers his face as just the parking guy from like her own life.
I do like that touch at the end though, because it's like, oh no, Kim does, it's going back into what she does in a lot of this episode is she's paying attention to the little people essentially.
Mm.
Like yeah, she does, remember, hey, you were the random guy in the parking attendant for however many years.
That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way, but the reason why she does remember him is because she does pay attention to the little people, if you will. And it's almost like this shocking moment for her here where she's realizing, he was pretending to be like this, random person, but really he's a big player. He's very smart. He knows what he's doing. He's got a history in this. He's a big deal, right? And in the context of things. So, I like that moment as well. He said masterful direction. Did you notice who directed this episode?
I didn't, but go on.
It was her. It was Kim.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I know. It stuck out to me. I don't know if she's done one before, but I saw the name come up at the start. I went, "Oh, Rhea Seehorn directed this." And then obviously,
I didn't notice that. No.
And then obviously, I'm noticing. Obviously, it's always got impeccable direction anyway. But like, I'm noticing that moment where it reveals, reveals Mike at the diner. The way the camera like goes across to reveal him, because it's going to be him, but she's already looking around at him, and the camera goes across. So there's a lot of little things like that, and I'm like. And she directs the hell out of all the scenes, but maybe she gave just a little extra touch of detail to the one she's in. Like, yeah,
don't get me wrong. Like, it's this show is pretty much all directed phenomenally, right? Like every episode has these moments, and this very much just plays to the show's style. But it is expertly done. Like, that scene in particular definitely stands out.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just so many little things in the conversation I liked. When she asks, "Why are you coming to me with this?" Like, Saul's the one he's the one that you've spoken to before, and I like this because it also follows on from stuff Mike was picking up towards the end of last season. Remember when they had the big standoff in the apartment? Mike at the end of the conversation said, "She just saved your life." Like, he gives her the accolade of, no, she's the only reason why Lalo didn't kill you too. Is because she was able to talk through it. And he says, because I think you're made of sterner stuff than him. Like, he doesn't think Saul should know. And it's notable that Saul has not noticed that he has been followed, because he clearly is as well.
I think this is, again, it follows on from the other lawyer last episode going to Kim about, about Saul and, who he's been working for, as opposed to going to Saul directly.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's someone from both of Saul's worlds went to Kim instead of himself. Yeah. Very notable. And it's kind of the idea that Saul Goodman will be created in the idea that if he doesn't have his chaperone, if you will, that that's when he'll be at his worst, and that's what we kind of know him as in Breaking Bad. So some interesting stuff being laid out there. So yeah, the scene was fantastic from start to finish. It's exciting when you get two characters who haven't really interacted that much, if at all, to really have like a meaningful conversation where, because we've been following Mike's story and Saul's story throughout the entire show, but Mike and Kim have never really interacted, they're both so important to us equally at this point, but they don't know each other. So that's what makes this feel special.
It's one of those moments that highlights, again, just how disparate the threads of this show have been over the course of it. Like, don't get me wrong, we've talked how there's been points where the Saul and Mike and Gustav have kind of overlapped a little bit, but for the most part, they've kind of just been running parallel tracks for 80-90% of the show. And this really kind of brings that to light of, hey, we're in our final season now, and we're only just having these two main characters meet for the first time.
And there's power in that. Like, there's always the risk when you have separate plot lines that are pretty separate, although in the odd intersection. We know they're connected because they both tie into eventually Breaking Bad, but there is like a threat of like one feeling more important and the other one feeling like dead weight. And it's never felt like that in this show because they've always been both, well written, directed, and so on. But there's power in holding off on something like this. And when you do finally like play the card of like, oh no, we can now put these two in the same room together and have them interact, it does feel like a really big deal because they've not done it before. So No, really, really good stuff. And we'll just stick in because really all of the other Mike and Gus stuff as the opening scene. But we don't see Gus or Mike. We just see this couple and they are men. But later on, we see Gus arriving home, and he's playing. Everything's normal. He gets his mail, but then we see
as soon as the door shuts, his face drops and the music comes in.
And then he's like, checking his bulletproof vest. Although I noticed it didn't look like it was a great vest. It looked like this is the best he can get away with under his normal work shirt, because anything like heftier would be too bulky and he wouldn't be able to disguise it. So I got the feeling like this is not as much protection as you'd want a nice bulky Kevlar vest.
This looks more like a stab-proof one as opposed to a bulletproof one.
Yeah. And he's checking the gun that he's got holstered to his leg that he's got there as a safety thing all day. And then, of course, it's funny, like, I think for other shows or other characters, him revealing that he's got an entrance in his, like, basement that goes to another house would feel almost ludicrous. But Gus actually has a history at this point of building secret underground things.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is, though, is because this show really painstakingly went through he got in workers in secret. It went through all the planning and the logistics of building a secret lair. It doesn't feel goofy with Gus because we know he actually goes through all the stages.
He does it properly, not just he's an evil villain with secret passages and shit. No, it's like no, he does it properly. We know that. We've seen him do it.
It doesn't just cut to the like, oh yes, I've got my bases on a hollowed out mountain and the secret passages to 10 different things. It's not like that.
It's also cool in its own genre, but.
But it's cheesy.
In this case, yes, it is cheesy, but then that's not what this show is.
No. Basically, so he's got like all these people based in like this, neighbor, this couple, they live in this house, either next door or across the street, and the neighbors are in, they're letting Gus like sort of like come in and out of their house, and that's where his base of operations is.
They don't even acknowledge him, they just carry on doing what they're doing.
Honestly, to the point where I'm like, are these neighbors he's like then befriended, or are these just people who he's like, hey, I bought the house next door so I could plant neighbors, and you two are just going to be like, they might not even be a real couple. They might just be like, a pair of like operatives who work for him.
I would see that, except they're going about doing, normal civilian stuff, right?
True, yeah, that's true.
The scene. Like, why would they do that if they're undercover in their own home?
Well, maybe it's
no one's going to see them anyway.
Well, maybe it's like, how Lalo had, this couple ready so he'd have a doppelganger in case of a rainy day. Maybe it's like that where they are relatively normal people who are, this is still where they live, it's still where they do all their normal things, but they've always been kind of there on retainer for Gus, just so that he could have like a place, because, if Lalo's going to come for him, he's not going to go to the neighbour's house, probably, he's going to go straight for Gus's house.
You would think, yeah.
There's a logic to it. And that's the other big thing with the Kim and Mike scene, obviously, is that, when he says, this is all about Lalo, she's like, he's dead. And he just kind of looks at her, and she's
stares.
Yeah, and he's like, he's not.
Yeah. And how long until she tells Saul? Because she doesn't yet.
She hasn't yet. What I love about this actually is I love how much they're selling the threat of Lalo. That we've not seen him now since. I mean, it's episode 1. Like he's literally not appeared since the end of episode 1. And
I am starting to think we're not going to see him until like the final scene before the 6-week break.
Yeah. Because it's just, but them selling like, where is he? And Mike says like, you're the only one who really thinks he's alive, and Gus is like, he is alive, and Mike's like, well, where is he? Like, it's really selling this threat that this is all the precautions that Gus is going to, and that they're looking after to an extent Saul and Kim and whoever else. So it really builds him and we already took him as a threat, but this really builds him. This puts him over as a serious risk. He's the boogeyman all of a sudden, and that's kind of exciting.
Yes, and it is that power in the unseen, that the longer they keep this up, kind of the more intense it's going to feel. Yeah.
So, all that stuff is really good. The rest of I guess we'll start with all the Hamlin plan, which is like a good chunk of the start of the episode. What's fun, I don't even think he really needed to do it with the distance that he was driving from, but Saul has this Hamlin disguise, just so that from a distance he could pass for Hamlin with this wig on.
One of my favourite moments in this episode it's another moment of just fantastic direction and editing, is because Hamlin's in his therapy session, whatever it is, and he says the line, I had a dream, or it might have been I had a nightmare, and it cuts to the back. It's Saul dressed up as him, walking away. And at first it plays like this is the dream.
Yeah, for a second I thought, are they doing a dream sequence here? Because that's not like.
And then it turns around and it's like, wait a second, because it takes your mind just a few seconds to process that this is Saul in the disguise.
Yeah, he's carrying a cone, which actually leads to one of the funniest lines I think of the whole show,
and also the most I've ever related to him.
Yeah, is who would move a cone?
What sort of asshole moves a cone?
Yeah, what sort of asshole moves a cone? Because obviously he's there to steal the car so he can go do his plan and bring it back, and he's putting the cone in the parking spot so he can park it in the same place. And when he comes back and someone's moved the cone to the side and taken the spot, what sort of asshole moves a cone?
I understand this with a fiery passion, because we do this at work at night. We put cones out to stop more people coming in. Right? And the amount of people that will move the cones and be like, are you open? Like, no, that's why the goddamn cones were there, you morons. It's swear. It's
pretty fun. Actually, it's and at least the funny scene as well, because he takes this spot next to it. It's not really a spot, it's yellow lines. It's like, an unparking zone.
Yeah.
And it's like right next to him. I'm like, okay, it's like one spot over. Like Hamlet might not notice he's a spot over, but just to make it convincing, there's all these little signs that say for patients only, because it's a therapist office. And there's like 4 of these signs in 4 spaces, and Saul then spends like a minute trying to wrestle this thing because it's just like stuck into the ground. It's not like bolted in or in.
It's like hammered down.
Yeah. So he's just trying to pull it up, and he eventually gets it. And part of me in my head was thinking, is this why he had the heart attack? I'm trying to pull this out of the ground to give him the heart attack. But he pulls it out of the ground. He eventually gets it in. He does that thing where he just swoops out a screen as Hamlin walks out.
It's a very similar shot to during the club in the changing room.
Yeah, very similar, yeah. Nice thematic link back to that, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, the plan itself, though, is that they want Ed Bailey Jr. to see a prostitute be kicked out of Hamlin's car and have her like yell, you asshole, you piece of shit kind of thing. So Kim's got like a lunch date with him to pose this idea, and the surprising thing for her here is that he goes for this idea, and we find out that Bailey Jr.'s son in the show has got drug problems, so he's actually got like a personal thing that he's going through that kind of relates to what's going on with what they're trying to convince him of.
I assume that they know this and that it's
possibly
kind of public knowledge, but I think it really works for us. That's why this is going to work. That's why they're going to sell this, because he's got a personal reason to be extra invested in this now.
Yeah, so it was great that Kim was like, wait, you're actually going to go for this idea? Oh, maybe we'll go through with this then. I thought you were just going to shoo away, because this was all just really a distraction tactic, basically. But yeah, I think what's neat about that is that not only does it give us a reason that he will go for this plan, or he'll fall for the plan, I should say, is that it also makes us sympathize a bit with him, that they're kind of playing on something that he's very real, that he's going through with a loved one, that they're kind of using as ammunition, which makes us morally that's a little bit harder. And it's same with Hamlin, is at the same time that like we get a good minute of his therapy session before it cuts to, says he has a dream, and it cuts to Saul. There's a minute of him talking about just like having troubles with his wife, and he seems like he's nervous to talk about it. He's struggling. He tries to make small talk about the firm first, and he's like, hey, I'm not a shareholder, I don't care really. He's like, I'm just warming up. And it's just little human moments with both of these people, so that we feel a little bad that Kim and Saul are doing this to them. But there's just a little bit of sympathy for them.
Yeah, it is really effective at doing that. And also this scene here with the spiel that Kim gives, it gives her a potential happy ending out for the end of the show.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is what she goes to pursue, and the fear that that she's had in this episode, when she's pulling off this scam and then she feels like she's being followed and she's worried it's the police, and she's like, oh god, what's going on?
It's the idea that whereas Saul has often ignored, not noticed, or whatever the consequences for his actions are, or fobbed them off, Kim might actually take the warnings that she's going to go through this season as like, oh no, this is the warning, I should back away, I should go back on the straight and narrow.
And go and pursue this instead, and kind of that's her potential happy ending, and kind of realize that she can't do that with Saul there.
Yeah, it's what we hope, and obviously there's some other things that play into that this episode with what Saul goes through, which is So he gets treated like everyone hates him at school, is how I describe it. He comes in, all of a sudden the guard who's usually nice to him is like, no, take off your belt and your shoes. We're checking everything. And then the woman at the counter, I love that he offers this little furry toy thing. And it's never really brought up, but if you just look in the foreground, you can see that she has a couple of them on her side of the desk. Yeah. So you can see that this is something she likes. But they're all treating him like shit. Even the other lawyer that he always, every so often he has this little, argument with this guy at the vending machine. All of this stuff builds up, and it's like he's sitting alone at lunch, right? We finally see where the lawyers have their lunch.
I actually really like the bit with the other lawyer in the staircase.
Mm.
He's like, right, what the hell's going on? And the guy's like, look, we know what you did. Word's gone out of you scamming the judges, doing something shitty like that, and abusing the system for someone that terrible. And we're all against you for that. And so I'll prove it. And he's like, yeah, there's proof and then there's knowing.
That's a really good line, because it's an interesting idea. Yeah, Saul can effectively legally make sure he's in the clear with certain things. But so much of who Saul is people trusting him. It's reputation. So if people just know, without proof even, if they just know and don't trust him anymore, then a lot of bridges all of a sudden are burned, and a lot of what he is, it almost makes him turn more into the cartel route, because all of a sudden all these other people aren't giving him the time of day.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't leave him much choice, and I think it's especially telling that coming in, a place of law, right? Yeah, where the whole point is proving things, and they're like, do you know what? There's proving things, and yes, we have to do that in a court of law, but knowing and being morally right, we're kind of all onto that as well.
Yeah, there's a nice dramatic irony there. I also, we can debate, if real lawyers in the world ever feel guilty about some of the shitbags they defend, even if they are getting paid obscene amounts of money to do it. But I do kind of like this idea that in this public courthouse, that a lot of these, small timers, shall we say, the idea that they have all heard that he did something kind of scummy like this to get someone that dangerous back on the street. It's like, we don't really like you anymore for doing this.
I think they're all along the lines of, if you'd played it fair and you'd got him out,
yeah, just by arguing in court, yeah,
right, they'd have kind of gone, well, that's the system, right? That's the system at work. But it's because he cheated the system, and that's where they're like, oh, well, this is where the line is drawn for the lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one lawyer, really. It's everyone who works there. Well,
yeah, the lawyers and all the other staff. Yeah,
the guards, the clerical, the clerical workers. Whoever, all of the workers, they're all kind of looking at him. So you get this great scene where he's sitting alone at his own little table at lunch, and of course this place has a lunch area. It had to have to, but we've never seen it before, so it was just kind of interesting seeing them finally all out here. But then he starts getting calls from multiple people, and the flip side to this is that all of a sudden, because word's out amongst a certain type of criminal that he was able to get Lalo Salamanca, out scot-free. I mean, cost him $7 million, but otherwise scot-free. They are all lining up, and that the whole joke is that the salons, the owner's really mad because there's all these criminals hanging around because now business is booming, and he has to give out numbers, he has to see them one by one, and it's like all of a sudden, because at first he's upset and he's like doesn't know how to deal with the fact that everyone doesn't like him, because that's kind of important to Saul in many ways, but then all these phone calls start rolling in. He sees them all, and he has to take all these meetings, and he's got all these retainers coming in, as he says to Kim. All of a sudden, he's like, "It's a good day. This is great."
Yeah, because it's that one guy who's like, "Are you the Salamanca lawyer?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "I guess I am."
And he hesitates a bit. He doesn't look super proud of it, but he does, say it. He goes like, "Yeah, okay, yeah."
He does, and then by the time he's seeing Kim and he's realizing, they want him on retainer just so they can say they've got the Salamanca lawyer on retainer.
Yeah, and of course that's the big thing at the end when he's shown her the empty lot for his office, which I think's his office from Breaking Bad.
It looks like yeah.
Which is the irony of him saying it's just temporary, and that's where he is right until the end of the Breaking Bad. But he, there's this when she hears wait, you got all this new business because of the cartel links. It's like, well, okay, kind of. I know it's not kind of. It's exactly that. That's exactly why.
That, yeah.
Yeah. But there's just this look, and she kind of goes along with it. But you can kind of see it's like you're going further down this deep end of being this type of lawyer. It plays into the tragedy of everything again, but it's also again this big giant warning sign of where things are going and how she might make her choices based on this.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a twist here in that for Saul, he feels like this is over, right? Lalo's dead. He is not actually the Salamanca's lawyer anymore, so he can kind of take these on and go, hey, I've got the reputation, but there's none of the repercussions that really come with that anymore. So for him, it's like, well, I'm just going to make the most of it. Whereas Kim now at the end here knows that he's maybe still alive. And it's like, oh God, if he's riding on the coattails and leaning into this, he's going to have absolutely no way out when he comes back.
Yeah, so she's obviously weighing the decision, should she tell him that he might be alive? And I think she obviously should, but I can kind of understand her hesitance. One, because she's probably at some level just happy to see him happy and feeling successful, because she does care about him. Like, that's clearly a thing between them. Like, they have genuine feelings and they care about each other. This is all, I mean, they're literally a married couple. I forget that sometimes because it was kind of a quick transition when it happened, but they're a married couple. So yeah, it's super interesting. And there's just these little things, like when Kim's like dropping off the prostitute and she offers her legal advice if she ever needs it, and things like, again, her looking out for people, trying to kind of do enough good things to not feel bad about the kind of scummy plan that they've got going at the same time. So yeah, it's a very interesting way to like round this story up, where you're seeing in some ways how Saul is forced to become more like Saul Goodman, and also in some ways how there was a way out. There is kind of a way out, at least right now. I mean, obviously when Lalo shows back up again, who knows what the situation is going to divulge into, but
ultimately we can see Saul, he is embracing it and becoming Saul full time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my hope is for the happy ending, outside of just Kim getting to go and be free and be happy in some way,
being alive,
is that Saul gets to be a part of like making that happen. Like, I think I said the last couple of seasons that my kind of hope at this point is that Saul gets to obviously not a life sacrifice, but gets to make a choice that allows her freedom, whether that's like negotiating that she's off limits to the cartel or something like that to make sure she's safe, or promising that he'll be there for them if they leave Kim alone. Something like that. The idea that he will make one good final act as he transitions into just being Saul Goodman.
Even if it's as simple as him being aware that just him being in this world is dangerous, and kind of being like, you've got to leave for your own safety, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we almost thought he was going to leave her at the end of the last season, just because he realized maybe my influence in being around her is just leading her down this path, and I don't want to do that to her. I don't want to corrupt her, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that alongside just the danger of the cartel. Yeah,
so it very well could be going down that route, and obviously, even with that, there's still sadness, there's still tragedy. I mean, the whole story with Saul's a tragedy, but that's kind of like the happiest of happy I can think of is he gets to make one good act to save her, and she gets to go and be alive and happy and free, and so on and so on.
And doing good lawyer stuff.
Yeah, doing things for people she cares about helping. Yeah, as we see examples of again in this episode, and we have throughout the season. So, yeah, I mean, like, it was a great episode.
It says a lot that it's obviously has the even better than usual perhaps direction, but it's mostly quite a standard episode, right? It's hey, it's an episode of Saul. And the fact that you go, it's a fantastic episode, it just shows you how good a show it is. Because I don't think this is like a particularly standout episode of the show overall.
No, it's funny because it's always been consistent anyway. So even a weak episode of Saul, by and large, is a really good standard. So it's not like we're in a rough place anyway. But I think what's interesting about this final season is because so much things have this weight, and because we're reaching climaxes and the ends of what all these threads, and they really genuinely have been threads that started in episode 1 and have continued going, and they're going to be climaxing soon. That when you feel them all coming together, it does have that potential for every episode almost this season to have that special quality. And things like this episode having the Mike and Kim scene is the example of being, we get these types of things now because it's the final season, and it makes them all feel a little bit special. So
that's true. Although, speaking of threads from episode 1, we were informed in the comments section that Nacho was introduced in episode 2.
I said it was close to, if not 1, it was close to 1, and you can't get any closer to 1 without being 1 in episode 2.
That is objectively true, but still, thought I'd bring it up.
Aye, well, somehow I win.
Sure. That's what you need to sleep at night.
Oh dear. So yeah, no, delightful. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Great episode. Looking forward to next time.
It was a great one.
So, let us know what you thought of this one. NZ comments below, like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters, mailed_fuzz for channel updates. And of course, if you want to support all the content, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, and you can support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonus goodies for your trouble. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?